The Dominion had conquered 100 worlds across the galaxy. 50 of those were classified as Deathworlds, planets with extreme environments that forced their inhabitants to become fierce, strong, and dangerous. The Dominion's strategy was simple: identify potential threats early and subjugate them before they developed space travel. Admiral Tark stood on the bridge of the Dominion flagship, his 4 eyes fixed on the blue-green planet rotating slowly on the main view screen. Earth was next on their list. Another Deathworld, another conquest, Captain Mox said, standing at attention beside him. What makes this one special enough for your personal attention, Admiral? Tark's upper mouth formed what passed for a smile in his species. This one has irregularities. The scout reports had been puzzling. Earth qualify as a death world by all standard metrics. Extreme temperature variations, high gravity, diverse and deadly fauna, unpredictable weather patterns, and tectonic instability. Yet the dominant species didn't match the typical profile. Display the human physiology report, Tark ordered. Holographic images appeared, showing humans from various angles. They looked soft, with no natural armor, minimal muscle mass compared to other Deathworld species, and no specialized adaptations like the poison glands of the Krex or the reinforced skeletons of the Vorn. These creatures evolved on a Deathworld? Mox asked, disbelief evident in his voice. Indeed, and not only survived but became the dominant species. Tark pulled up more images. Human cities spanning continents, spacecraft, weapons systems. Unlike other Deathworld species we've encountered, humans compensated for their physical weaknesses with tool use and social cooperation. They've achieved space travel much earlier in their development than our models predicted. Mox studied the data. They seem fractured. Thousands of distinct cultural groups, constant internal conflicts. How could such a divided species advance so rapidly? That is precisely what makes them interesting, Tark replied, and potentially dangerous. The standard Dominion approach to conquest involved a display of overwhelming force followed by demands for surrender. Most species, even the fierce ones from Deathworlds, quickly calculated the odds and submitted. Those that resisted were made examples of. We'll proceed with the standard protocol, Tark decided. But I want extra monitoring. There's something about these humans that doesn't fit our models. The command was given, and the massive Dominion fleet began its approach toward Earth's orbit. 5,000 warships, each capable of leveling a city, arranged themselves in the intimidation formation that had broken the will of countless worlds before. Down on Earth, humans went about their daily lives, unaware that they had been marked for conquest. In a small observatory in Arizona, astronomer Dr. Jack Reed was the first to notice the unusual readings on his instruments. That can't be right, he muttered, adjusting his equipment. The readings showed thousands of massive objects suddenly appearing at the edge of the solar system, moving in perfect formation. He reached for his phone with shaking hands and dialed his colleague at NASA. Lisa, I'm sending you some data. Tell me I'm hallucinating. 3 minutes later, his phone rang. You're not hallucinating, Jack. Lisa's voice was unnaturally calm. We're tracking them too. Whatever they are, they're heading straight for Earth. Within hours, governments around the world received the same information. Emergency meetings were called. Military forces went on high alert. The news broke on social media before official announcements could be made. As the Dominion fleet approached, Admiral Tark watched the planet's response with interest. Unlike other worlds that reacted with unified panic or aggression, Earth's response was chaotic, decentralized, and surprisingly varied. Fascinating, he said softly. They don't even have a single planetary defense strategy. What Tark didn't yet understand was that this apparent weakness would soon prove to be humanity's greatest strength. Admiral Tark paced the bridge of his command ship, watching multiple screens displaying different regions of Earth. The humans' response to the Dominion fleet continued to puzzle him. Sir, I'm detecting thousands of different communication signals, reported Officer Lunn, her antenna twitching in confusion. They're not using a standard unified defense channel. Each region seems to be coordinating independently. Tark nodded. What about their weapons systems? Primitive by our standards. Nuclear missiles, kinetic weapons, basic energy shields around some facilities. Nothing that should trouble our fleet. Yet something felt wrong. In his 300 cycles of service, Tark had led the conquest of 12 Deathworlds. Each one followed a predictable pattern. The inhabitants were always physically impressive, strong, fast, armored, venomous, and utterly predictable in their responses. They would unite under the strongest leader and launch everything they had in a direct assault. Humans were doing none of that. Send down a scout team, Tark ordered. I want first-hand information about these creatures. The scout ship deployed to a remote area in what humans called Montana. Commander Drell led his team of 5 elite soldiers, each armed with weapons that could level small buildings. Remember, Drell told his team, these are Deathworld creatures. They may look weak, but they survived here for thousands of years. Stay alert. They landed near a small human settlement. The plan was simple. Capture a few specimens, gather data, and return to the fleet. What happened next would change the Dominion's understanding of humanity forever. The scouts didn't encounter the fierce resistance they expected. Instead, they found an empty town. Sensors showed no human life forms within a 5-mile radius. They detected our approach and fled, Drell concluded. Cowardly, but intelligent. They began collecting samples from human dwellings when the attack came, not from warriors with weapons, but from tiny unseen enemies. 3 of Drell's soldiers suddenly collapsed, their respiratory systems failing. Biological agent, Drell shouted, activating his emergency shield. Back to the ship. But it was too late. The invisible pathogens, ordinary Earth bacteria harmless to humans, but deadly to the Dominion species, had already infected them. Only Drell managed to return to the command ship, and even he was severely ill. They weaponized their planet's microorganisms against us, Tark said, reviewing the disaster from the safety of quarantine protocols. No other species has ever thought to do that. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., General Tom Harris watched satellite footage of the alien scout ship's hasty retreat. It worked, he said to the room of military and scientific advisors. Dr. Bell's theory was correct. Dr. Emma Bell, a microbiologist, nodded grimly. They're not adapted to Earth's microbial environment. What's harmless to us is deadly to them, but they'll adapt quickly or develop countermeasures. This only buys us time. Across the globe, humans were responding in ways the Dominion couldn't predict. Some nations launched missiles at the alien fleet, which were easily destroyed. Others broadcast messages of peace and welcome on all frequencies. Underground bunkers filled with people, while others threw end-of-the-world parties on beaches. Back on his ship, Admiral Tark studied all this with growing concern. They're not behaving like any Deathworld species we've encountered, he told his war council. They're not physically imposing, yet they've dominated a planet that should have killed them. They don't unite under a single leader, yet somehow their chaos doesn't destroy them. Captain Mox, who had finally recovered from his own brush with Earth pathogens, spoke up. Perhaps we've misunderstood what makes them dangerous. It's not their bodies. It's their minds. Tark stared at the view screen showing Earth, beautiful and blue against the darkness of space. Then we must change our approach. Prepare for full invasion protocols. These humans are more dangerous than we thought. The Dominion invasion began at dawn. 5,000 warships descended through Earth's atmosphere, positioned strategically over major population centers. Each ship deployed hundreds of drop pods containing battle-ready soldiers equipped with advanced weaponry and armor designed to conquer worlds far more physically dangerous than Earth. All units, commence the standard conquest protocol, Admiral Tark commanded from orbit. Remember, these are soft creatures. Show overwhelming force, accept any surrender, eliminate continued resistance. The first wave hit major cities across the globe. New York, Beijing, Moscow, London, Tokyo. The Dominion expected swift capitulation. What they got instead was chaos. In New York, Commander Vrex led his battalion into the concrete canyons of Manhattan, only to find the streets nearly empty. "Where are the defenders?" he asked over the tactical network. "Scanners show life signs everywhere, but I see no organized resistance." Then the attack came, not from soldiers with uniform tactics, but from civilians using their environment in ways the Dominion had never encountered. Construction workers dropped steel beams from half-finished skyscrapers. Taxi drivers formed vehicular barricades that separated Dominion units. Police officers, armed with weapons that should have been useless against alien armor, somehow knew to aim for joint seams and vision sensors. Similar reports flooded in from around the world. In Tokyo, the Dominion forces found themselves stymied by subway systems they couldn't map. In Moscow, the defenders had somehow anticipated invasion routes and mined them in advance. In rural areas, humans simply disappeared into forests and mountains, becoming invisible to standard sensors. "This makes no sense," Captain Mox said, reviewing the casualty reports. "We've lost nearly 15% of our first-wave forces, and we've barely made any territorial gains." Admiral Tark studied the battle maps with growing concern. "They're not fighting like a Deathworld species should. The Kreks met us with massive armies. The Vorn tried to overwhelm us with numbers. These humans, they're fighting like insects, scattered and unpredictable." In a hidden command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Harris watched the global defense unfold. Next to him, Dr. Bell analyzed incoming data from the battlefield. "The alien tech is at least 200 years beyond ours," she reported grimly. "But they keep making the same mistake. They expect us to fight like them." "And we won't," Harris said, allowing himself a small smile. "Get me the status on Project Mockingbird." Across every battlefield, the Dominion forces were discovering that humans had one capability they hadn't anticipated: adaptation. Within hours of the first contact, human forces were already using captured alien weapons. Within a day, human engineers had figured out how to disrupt Dominion communication systems. In Beijing, a team of university students had hacked into the Dominion tactical network and was broadcasting false orders. In Brazil, guerrilla fighters were using the dense rainforest to ambush and overwhelm technologically superior forces. In Egypt, defenders had somehow figured out that the desert sand could be weaponized against the aliens' breathing filters. On the third day of the invasion, Admiral Tark called an emergency war council. "This is unprecedented," he admitted to his commanders. "We've conquered 17 Deathworld species, and none of them adapted this quickly. These humans, they don't fight with physical strength. They fight with their minds." "What does this mean for the invasion?" asked Commander Zell, the fleet's strategic officer. Tark stared at the holographic display of Earth, now marked with thousands of red dots indicating Dominion losses. "It means we need to change our approach completely," he said finally. "These humans aren't just another Deathworld species. They're something we've never encountered before." As the Dominion regrouped, humanity prepared for the next phase. They had survived the initial onslaught not through superior strength or technology, but through something the aliens clearly didn't understand: creativity, adaptability, and the stubborn refusal to follow the rules of war as the Dominion understood them. The invasion had begun, but it wasn't going according to plan. 3 weeks into the invasion, the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains buzzed with activity. General Harris studied the global battle map, where blue dots represented human strongholds and red indicated Dominion control. Despite overwhelming alien technology, the blue areas weren't shrinking as expected. "They control the skies, but we're denying them the ground," Harris said to the assembled military and civilian leaders. "Now we need to move beyond defense." Dr. Bell pushed her way to the front of the briefing room, carrying a tablet with fresh data. Dark circles under her eyes revealed she hadn't slept in days. "We've analyzed debris from downed alien craft," she announced. "Their technology relies on principles we understand: just more advanced. It's not magic. She tapped her tablet, and a holographic display showed the inner workings of an alien weapon. Their energy weapons use a form of plasma containment we theorized but couldn't build. But now we can reverse engineer it. Bill Taylor, a former auto mechanic who had salvaged alien tech from a crash site in Detroit, spoke up from the back of the room. My team has already converted 3 of their power cells to run our equipment. The principles are similar to our fusion research, just more efficient. Around the world, similar breakthroughs were happening. In Japan, engineers had adapted alien alloys to strengthen conventional weapons. In Kenya, a team had cracked the basic operating system of Dominion communication devices. In Brazil, guerrilla fighters had discovered that the aliens' motion sensors could be fooled by mimicking animal movements. The most surprising developments came from unexpected places. A group of video game designers in Poland created virtual simulations of alien tactics that helped train human fighters. Australian Aboriginal guides taught soldiers how to move through open terrain without detection. Teachers repurposed classroom materials to create emergency medical supplies. At Dominion Fleet Command, Admiral Tark watched the situation with growing unease. "They learn too quickly," he told his officers. "Every tactic we deploy is countered within days. Every advantage we press is soon neutralized." Captain Mox, who had been studying human behavior patterns, presented his findings. "They don't fight like a typical Deathworld species. They don't rely on strength, speed, or natural weapons. Their advantage is in their diversity of thought." "Explain," Tark demanded. "Most species we conquer think alike. Their evolutionary path creates predictable responses. Humans evolved differently. Their planet forced them to adapt mentally rather than physically. They solve problems in thousands of different ways." In a captured laboratory in Geneva, Dominion scientists dissected human brains, looking for the source of their unusual capabilities. "Their neural pathways show remarkable plasticity," the lead researcher reported to Tark. "They can create new connections and learn new skills throughout their lives. And each brain is configured differently, unlike our more standardized patterns." As the 4th week of invasion began, humanity launched its first coordinated counterattack. It wasn't a conventional military operation, but something the Dominion had never encountered before. A simultaneous strike against their communication systems worldwide. Amateur radio operators broadcast interference signals. Hackers deployed viruses created by studying alien code. Physical attacks targeted communication relay stations. None of these tactics would have worked alone, but together they briefly blinded the Dominion network. In those precious hours of alien confusion, human forces reclaimed key positions and captured critical alien technology. When Dominion communications resumed, Admiral Tark received the disturbing reports. "How did they coordinate this?" he demanded. "We monitored all their military channels." "They didn't use military channels," Captain Mox replied. "They used something called social media and messaging apps, civilian communication systems we didn't consider important enough to monitor." Tark stared at the battle map, now showing significantly more blue than before. "These humans," he said quietly, "they don't fight like warriors. They fight like a planet-wide hive mind, but with each member thinking independently." For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Tark felt something unfamiliar. Doubt about the outcome of a conquest. Admiral Tark stood before the High Command hologram, his posture rigid despite the exhaustion of 6 weeks fighting on Earth. "The standard conquest protocol has failed," he reported. "I request permission to deploy Omega weapons." The 3 supreme commanders of the Dominion exchanged glances. Omega weapons were planet killers, reserved for only the most dangerous worlds. They had been used only twice in the 1,000-year history of the Dominion. "Explain why these primitive creatures warrant such measures," demanded Supreme Commander Vex. "The humans are unlike any species we encountered," Tark replied. "They lack physical advantages, but compensate with mental adaptability. They've captured our technology and are already using modified versions against us. If we don't end this now, we risk a prolonged conflict. After a brief conference, the Supreme Commanders nodded. Permission granted. Deploy the Omega weapons. End this resistance. On Earth, the first sign of the new Dominion strategy came when massive ships, larger than any seen before, moved into position above major cities. These weren't ordinary warships, but specialized planet killers capable of rendering entire continents uninhabitable. In the Rocky Mountain Command Center, alarms blared as sensors detected the new threat. They're positioning for a mass extinction event, Dr. Bell said, her voice steady despite the implications, similar to what wiped out the dinosaurs, but deliberate. General Harris studied the incoming data grimly. Can we shoot them down? Not with our current weapons, replied Air Force Colonel Mike Wilson, but we might have another option. He nodded to a young lieutenant who brought forward what looked like a modified satellite dish. This is Project Boomerang, Wilson explained. We've been studying how their ships communicate. They use a specific frequency to coordinate attacks. This device doesn't just jam their signal, it reflects it back with altered instructions. Can it work on those planet killers? Harris asked. In theory. We've only tested it on smaller vessels, but the underlying technology is the same. Deploy them immediately, Harris ordered, and alert all resistance cells to prepare for the worst. Within hours, modified boomerang devices were in position near every major Omega weapon. As the Dominion prepared to fire, the devices activated. Aboard his command ship, Admiral Tark watched in horror as the Omega weapons suddenly turned away from Earth, some firing into empty space, others shutting down completely. What's happening? He demanded. Our weapons are receiving conflicting commands, a technician replied frantically. The firing sequences are being scrambled. Impossible. The control systems are encrypted with. An explosion cut him off as one of the Omega platforms self-destructed, its targeting systems catastrophically confused by the reflected signals. On Earth, humans watched the sky light up with alien explosions. The Dominion fleet fell into disarray as command ships lost contact with their squadrons. Some alien vessels even fired on each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe in the communication chaos. In a small lab in Bangalore, India, computer scientist Dr. Raj Patel worked furiously to push the advantage. His team had cracked the basic architecture of Dominion command protocols. Their entire fleet operates on a hierarchical system, he explained to military leaders via video conference. Disrupt the top, and the rest become vulnerable. They never planned for decentralized resistance. Across the globe, humans launched coordinated attacks against the confused Dominion forces. Captured alien weapons were turned against their former owners. Makeshift EMPs disabled alien technology. In some areas, humans even managed to hijack Dominion transports. Admiral Tark ordered an emergency retreat to high orbit to regroup. We faced 17 Deathworld species, he told his officers. All of them fought with predictable patterns. These humans, they changed their tactics constantly. They learn from every encounter. They're not physically imposing, but their minds. He stared at the blue planet below, beautiful and deadly in ways he'd never anticipated. We're not fighting a species, he realized. We're fighting an idea. Millions of ideas, all working together but thinking differently. For the first time in Dominion history, a conquest force was on the defensive. The turning point had come. 2 months into the invasion, the Dominion held an emergency war council in high orbit above Earth. Admiral Tark faced his remaining officers, their numbers drastically reduced from the original invasion force. Our casualties exceed 40%, he reported grimly. This has never happened in Dominion history. Not even the Skorkers of Xavis 7 inflicted such losses. Captain Mox, now promoted to head of intelligence after his predecessor's death, activated a holographic display showing Earth's surface dotted with red and blue markers. We still control significant territory, Mox said, but humans retake areas as soon as we shift resources elsewhere. They're fighting a fluid war while we're fighting a static one. How? Demanded Commander Zell. Their technology is primitive. Their bodies are fragile. They don't even have natural armor or enhanced senses. They should have fallen in the first week. The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lev, the Dominion's chief xenobiologist, had been studying captured humans for weeks. She stepped forward, her usually confident posture now hesitant. "I believe I've identified why our standard conquest protocols failed," she said. "We fundamentally misunderstood what makes humans dangerous." She displayed a series of brain scans. Dominion brains compared to human brains. All previous Deathworld species evolved specialized neural structures, enhanced aggression, improved reflexes, instinctive battle responses. Humans have none of these. Instead, they possess extraordinary neuroplasticity. "Speak plainly," Tark ordered. "Their brains can rewire themselves constantly. They don't have fixed responses. Every human thinks differently, approaches problems from unique angles. When we deployed a new weapon, most species would need generations to adapt. Humans adapt within days." In the underground labs beneath what remained of MIT, Dr. Bell made a similar discovery. "Look at their biology," she told General Harris, showing him tissue samples from a dead Dominion soldier. "They're perfectly adapted for their home environment. Efficient neural pathways, specialized organs, reinforced skeletal structures." "That's good, right?" Harris asked. "Makes them stronger." "It makes them predictable," Bell replied. "Their biology channels them into specific responses. They can't think outside their evolutionary programming. We can." She switched screens to show a map of recaptured territories. "Notice something. We're winning in the most chaotic environments. Cities, varied terrain, places with extreme weather, places where adaptability matters more than strength." Back on the Dominion command ship, Admiral Tark made a difficult decision. "Prepare the fleet for full withdrawal," he ordered. The command room erupted in protests. "We cannot retreat." Commander Zell shouted. "The Dominion has never abandoned a conquest." "If we stay, we lose everything," Tark replied calmly. "These humans, they're not just another species. They represent an entirely different evolutionary path." He gestured to Dr. Lev, who continued her explanation. "Most Deathworld species become stronger, faster, more aggressive. Humans became smarter, more creative, more cooperative. They evolved to overcome challenges not just individually, but collectively. But they fight among themselves constantly," Captain Mox objected. "Their history is endless warfare." "Yes," Dr. Lev agreed. "And that diversity of conflict forced them to develop thousands of different fighting styles, technologies, and strategies. While we perfected one approach, they explored countless alternatives. As the Dominion debated retreat, humanity prepared its boldest move yet. Using adapted alien technology, they were ready to take the fight beyond Earth. In launch facilities around the world, captured Dominion shuttles were being retrofitted with human modifications. Volunteer crews trained to operate alien systems. For the first time, humans would fight in space, bringing their chaotic, adaptive warfare to the Dominion fleet itself." Admiral Tark stared at Earth through the view screen, finally understanding what they faced. "We've been conquering the wrong kind of Deathworld," he said softly. "Physical challenges create physically superior beings. But Earth created something far more dangerous." "What's that?" asked Captain Mox. "Minds that thrive on change," Tark replied. "And we just gave them access to our technology." The first human attack on the Dominion fleet shocked even Admiral Tark. Modified alien shuttles swarmed from Earth's surface, piloted by humans who had learned to operate complex alien technology in mere weeks. Their tactics defied conventional space warfare doctrine. They didn't form orderly attack patterns, but instead created deliberate chaos. "They're flying directly into our firing solutions," Captain Mox said in disbelief as he watched humans intentionally position themselves where Dominion targeting systems predicted they wouldn't go. On the lead assault shuttle, Colonel Wilson guided his squadron through the alien defenses. Unlike Dominion pilots who relied on standardized training, Wilson's team included Air Force pilots, video game champions, and even stunt drivers, each bringing unique approaches to space combat. Remember, they expect us to be predictable, Wilson told his pilots over the comm. So be anything but that. The human ships took heavy losses but inflicted unprecedented damage. When Dominion vessels adapted to their tactics, the humans simply changed approaches mid-battle. Admiral Tark ordered a full retreat to the far side of Earth's moon to regroup. They shouldn't be able to do this, Commander Zell insisted. They've never fought in space before. That's precisely why they're succeeding, Tark replied. They have no preconceptions about space warfare. While we follow established doctrines, they invent new ones on the spot. On Earth, General Harris received reports of the space battle's success with grim satisfaction. We've bought ourselves time, he told the Global Leadership Council, but we can't win a prolonged war of attrition. We need to end this conclusively. Dr. Bell stepped forward with a proposal so audacious it silenced the room. We've analyzed their communication protocols completely. We can send a message directly to their homeworld, not just to the invasion fleet, but to their entire civilization. What would we say? Asked the Prime Minister of Japan. The truth, Dr. Bell replied simply. About who we are. About who they are. 3 days later, as the Dominion fleet prepared for a final desperate assault, they received unexpected orders from the Supreme Command. Stand down immediately. Admiral Tark was summoned to a direct communication with the 3 Supreme Commanders, an unprecedented event during an active conquest. Is this transmission accurate? Demanded Supreme Commander Vex, displaying the message humans had sent to the Dominion homeworld. The message contained everything humans had learned about Dominion biology, psychology, and evolution, along with a comprehensive analysis of how it compared to human development. It explained how the Dominion's evolutionary path on their own harsh world had created beings of great physical and technological prowess, but limited adaptability. It offered cooperation instead of conflict. It appears to be accurate, Tark admitted. These humans, they understood us better after 3 months than we understood them after years of study. They're offering an alliance rather than surrender, said Supreme Commander Lox, the oldest of the 3 leaders. No conquered species has ever done this. On Earth's surface, humans waited anxiously for the response. They had gambled everything on a radical idea that even an advanced conquering species could learn and adapt if presented with compelling evidence. The response came at dawn. Dominion ships descended toward Earth once more, but this time, they landed rather than attacked. Admiral Tark himself set foot on the planet's surface to meet with human leaders. We've conquered 17 Deathworld species, he told General Harris and Dr. Bell at the historic first meeting. Each one was physically impressive, but mentally predictable. We believed all harsh worlds produced the same kind of life. Earth proved you wrong, Dr. Bell said. Yes, Tark agreed. Your world didn't create stronger bodies. It created more flexible minds. You survived not by overpowering your environment, but by continuously adapting to it. And now, General Harris asked cautiously. Now we learn from each other, Tark replied. Your message to our homeworld showed us something we'd never considered, that mental adaptability might be more valuable than physical prowess in the long term. As the first Human Dominion Treaty was signed, Dr. Bell realized the profound truth. Earth wasn't exceptional because it was the harshest Deathworld. It was exceptional because it was the most unpredictable one, a planet whose greatest threats weren't predators or elements, but the constant need to adapt to change itself. In creating humans, Earth had produced something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that thrived on challenges not because they were stronger, but because they refused to stay the same.